Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and brought to you by the generous support of the Tennessee Valley Authority. To learn more about TVA's impact on our community, follow TVA on Instagram at TVA and on Twitter X at TVA News. My Morning Cup, where we have interesting conversations with genuine people. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Edna Varner. Edna is a longtime educator and community leader in Chattanooga. Edna, welcome to My Morning Cup. Before I ask you about your favorite nonprofit of the 10 nonprofit boards you've chaired, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
Well, in my morning cup is something I love, coffee. I don't care what brand it is. I don't care whether it's hot or even when it gets cold. It gives me just the jump start I need. I don't drink it all day.
Yeah.
I have one cup that I nurse, and even when it gets cold, I finish that cup. So I'm not a 10-cup drinker.
So do you start out in the morning at home with coffee, or do you wait till you get to the office?
I wait till I get to the office. At home is water. I'm trying
smart.
to do better with the water.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah.
It's amazing what doctors say about water, isn't it?
Right. So start the day with water, and then I have my first cup that I nurse all day at work.
How long does it take you to finally give up that cup?
I don't know. Sometimes the next morning, the cup is still there with a few drops in it.
Well, I'm so thrilled you're here. You've had a huge impact on the city of Chattanooga. I don't know if there's a person out there that doesn't know who Edna Varner is, and I really look forward to this conversation with you. So you were born and raised in Chattanooga, and you've got 7 brothers and sisters.
I do. Large family.
Yeah.
I have a couple of friends who are only children, and I told them I thought I envied that because they got more gifts.
Yeah.
But no, I love having been in a large family, and I think it's one of the reasons I get my energy from people.
Yeah.
I love to be with groups of people.
You know, that's a great point. As we were talking earlier, I'm one of 7, and I think a large family is kind of that gift that keeps on giving.
It is.
My wife's an only child, and so that was an interesting dynamic when she got thrown into the middle of all
She
that.
was probably overwhelmed.
Oh, to say the least. But with something like Thanksgiving coming up, I'm used to these big Thanksgivings. We'll have 55 people, and we've done the smaller Thanksgiving in the past where it's just our immediate family and my wife and her mother. And I think that's where my need to be around a crowd is bigger than my wife's need to say, hey, I need some quiet time here too.
No, we have the large Thanksgivings too, because part of our Thanksgiving tradition is to share old stories, old family stories, make fun of each other.
That's a great tradition.
And we enjoy that with the siblings. So, yeah, we gotta have everybody together.
We do a lot of the making fun of each other. I think that just comes natural with it all. So growing up in Chattanooga, you also grew up in a different time in Chattanooga where, in the 50s and 60s, and civil rights were an issue, and segregation was still being practiced in a lot of ways, whether officially or unofficially. Can you talk a little bit what it was like to grow up on 9th Street in that area and what your world was?
Interesting. When I look back on it, I'm glad I experienced that, because it's one thing to read about it, but when you experience it very differently. I grew up on 9th Street, and I knew just because we eventually had a TV, we didn't at first. We sat by the radio and looked at the radio, like you see in some of the old pictures, and got our news from there. But I knew about segregation. But our world was really from about Lindsay Street to Central.
Okay.
And it wasn't we didn't experience that because we were all black. And so there were no white and colored signs up. All of the people I saw all day were black. Our schools were in that footprint. Our hospital was in that footprint. And so the only time we really experienced some of segregation was when we went downtown to Market Street. We'd go down to the Leader, people who've grown up here know that, and get our school clothes. Or we'd go to Cressis. or Woolworths to buy things, and you go to the restroom and there's signs white and colored, and the water fountains white and colored. And when I taught, some of my kids would say, well, why did you tolerate that? And I said, we didn't think we were tolerating. It's just like you go to the restroom and there's a sign that says men and women. You saw the sign that said colored white. You went to your restroom. And I've told them there are things right now you're tolerating and you don't even realize you're tolerating it. But it didn't feel like that. And we were there for morning shopping. And then we'd go back to 9th Street where our world didn't feel segregated at all.
And for folks who aren't longtime Chattanooga's, 9th Street is now MLK.
Right. ML King was 9th Street. And there's still some places that are on that street that are called Big Nine or something.
The Big Nine,
but people who grew up here, we reference it as MLK, but it's 9th Street. And of course, there's a West 9th Street, so you're reminded.
Oh, there is? I see. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Cross Market is West 9th.
I did not know that.
Yes.
That's interesting. So growing up in that, obviously 7 siblings, can you talk a little bit about your parents? Because I know raising 8 kids has got to be, a full-time job, number one, but just their push to you and your siblings on education.
Yeah. Well, my biological father passed away when I was a kid. He and my mother had actually gotten divorced. And so what other people would call your stepfather, he raised us, but we don't do steps in our family. We don't have step siblings or stepfather. So my father raised us, and both my mother and father dropped out of high school. He had a previous marriage. She had a previous marriage. A baby in the picture was the reason for dropping out. But they valued education, and we never doubted they valued education. And they always told us they wanted more for us, more for ourselves than they were able to get. And they were strict in the house. You did homework every night. You made good grades. If the teacher said you did something, you did it. There was no going to the school to question authority. What was great about them, and I didn't realize it was happening at the time, was they were getting all of us through school. And then after they launched all of us, everybody didn't go to college. About half of us went to college. A couple of siblings went straight to the Army. But anyway, after they got us launched, then they went back and got their GEDs.
Wow.
I don't remember helping my father study for his, but I remember helping my mother study for her GED. It was really important for them to get those. And then after they got their GEDs, it was so interesting how their lives ended up. My father ended up with an honorary doctorate from Morehouse.
That's incredible.
And my mother ended up as chief of police, Chattanooga, Tennessee. She was chief over school patrol officers. She started out as just a school patrol officer on the beat, and she got promoted to captain, and she moved up in the ranks, and she was deputy chief. And she worked with a wonderful woman, Jeanette Wilkerson. People from here will remember her, who was the chief. And she was planning to retire. And she thought with only a GED, they wouldn't consider my mother for chief. And so what she did was she went to, I believe it was Mayor Jean Roberts, and said she'd like to switch positions with my mother. She wanted to be the deputy chief and make my mother the chief. And she did that. And then at the end of the year, she retired. And my mother was chief of police over school patrol traffic.
She already was. What a great honor to her. Is that a position that still exists in the police department?
It is a position that still exists in the police department. There is a chief over school patrol and the other ranks. And my mother was, I love to volunteer.
Yes.
My mother was the queen of volunteers. She was the president of the Forgotten Child Fund for many years. She won all kind of volunteer awards. So when people say, you like to volunteer? I say, well, I had a great example.
You come by it honestly.
I do. I just saw my mother always out there helping in some way. And my father became a Baptist minister. And of course, service is built into the job. So I'm from a service family. So
what do you suppose drove that for them? I mean, there's 8 kids. You're busy enough.
I don't know. Part of it, I guess, was religion.
Yeah.
We were very religious. My mother first. I'll say this. My father wouldn't go to church. My mother was the one who took us to church. And then we lived on 9th Street, and then we moved to the projects. And that gave them an opportunity with reduced rent to save enough money to buy a home. And when we finally bought a home, it was right across the street from a church. So my father was forced to go to church. Next thing we knew, he was a deacon. The next thing we knew, he was a preacher.
So he took to it quickly.
Right. But religion is part of service.
Yeah.
So a lot of that came from just the desire to serve as part of our religion. And then we got just so many community opportunities to serve. And, service, I think, makes you feel so good. People think it's always the giving part, but what you get through service, it is huge. Just the opportunity to give is huge. And you don't have to give $1 million. You can be poor and still serve. And that's what's so great about it, too.
Well, and I'm so glad you said that. One of the things we try and do with the podcast is point out how you've got to be involved in your community. But to your point, you don't have to be the richest person in the room. You got time and talent beyond treasure.
Right. And I remember when I first got elected to a board, I think Community Foundation may have been my first board, and I knew that we were obligated to give something. So I asked Pete Cooper, who a longtime mentor.
Who we just lost.
We just lost. He was the one who got me in Rotary. But I said, what do people give? Because I don't want to give an embarrassing gift. And he said, I'm not going to tell you that. He said, you give what you can give. And he would never tell me what the average gift was. He said, you just give. And I think I may have known that, but he affirmed that. And so that's what I tell other people. It doesn't matter how much. If you can give $10,000, great. But if 10, and that's biblical too. If 10 for you is like 10,000, give 10, give 5, give 1, but give something. And when I started giving, I gave a little. I was a school teacher. I gave a little, and now I can give more because I have more. But I don't think I would be giving more if I hadn't started just understanding whatever you can give. And sometimes it's not money. Like you said, it's more important that you give your time. In fact, my time now is incredibly valuable because I have a lot of things I want to do and a lot of ways I believe I can be of service. So my time is valuable. I knew somebody, he was going to do some work, and he said, well, if you can do this, it'll cost you less. And I told him, my time is more valuable than what you want to charge me for this. I'd rather you charge me more and not make me wait here. So time, oh my gosh, it is such a gift.
Well, we can't get it back.
No.
And if you're giving it to someone, it really is a gift.
It is a gift. And sometimes the gift, at my brother's memorial service, I shared something, and I don't know how I learned it, but it's the gift of with. Sometimes it's just being with somebody. And as I get older and the people who were important to me in my life are older, I could send them flowers and that. But it's the gift of being with. So to carve out some time.
Yeah.
And this is not to honor me, but Pete Cooper was so important in my life. I had to make time to go there to spend some time with him. Not enough, but the gift of with, that is huge, just to spend some time with someone.
I've never heard it put like that before, but you put it in a way that really hits home. I mean, most people would tell you, I don't want anything except I'd like a little time with you.
That is it. And my brother who passed away was good at that. He, my biological father had a first family that I didn't know very well. He was the one who tracked them down. He was the one who went to spend time, and he connected me with them. During COVID, he and his wife drove up from Atlanta and went to all of our homes, and they were in the driveway. They would text us, and we would come out on the porch, and we would spend time with each other. And he went to every family member and did that. And so I think he made me remember how important just time with people.
Yeah.
It's so valuable, and it's a service. Mm-hmm. It's a service like going to a shelter and feeding people. It's a service. It's a service to people you care deeply about. They deserve the gift of with.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to steal that one from you.
You can have it.
Well, thank you.
I stole it from somebody and I can't even remember.
Well, as long as we pass it on, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted your parents obviously had a huge effect on you and your siblings and gave you a strong grounding. I want to talk a little bit about the educational aspect. So you went to Riverside High School. When did you decide you wanted to be a teacher?
I knew in elementary school I wanted to be a teacher. I actually work with a program at the Public Ed Foundation where we recruit people who have always felt a calling to teaching, but maybe somebody talked them into doing something else. So one of the things I tell them is I knew in elementary school I wanted to be a teacher. I loved what happened to me in school. I developed a love for music when I was in school. I was in the flutophone ukulele band, and I don't know how my parents were able to sacrifice to buy me a $5 ukulele.
So what is the flutophone ukulele band? I'm not familiar with the flutophone.
Well, our music teacher was determined to introduce music. A flutophone is like a little plastic flute. It costs $5, and the ukulele costs $5. You could go down to Woolworths or Crescents and get it. So we had a band. And it started my love of music. Mm-hmm. And so in elementary, I was in the flutophone ukulele band. I was also in several of the plays. I was the princess who could not cry in the play. And I also, this is a bit of trivia, in the little theater production of The Wiz, I sang the opening song as Annie M.
Did you really?
So that developed my love of theater. And that's what schools should help do.
Yeah.
Really affluent parents force their kids to do things, piano lessons and go to all those. And I think what they're trying to do is help them to discover their talents. Well, when you grew up in a poor family, you don't get to do all of that. School introduces you to all of that. So now my love of music, I don't care whether it's Vivaldi or fancy like country song. Mm-hmm. I love all kinds of music, maybe not heavy metal, but that developed my love of music. Just so many great things happened to me in school, and I hit the teacher jackpot every single year. Segregated schools, all of us black, all the teachers black.
So all through high school, you were in a segregated school.
Oh, yeah. Brown versus Board of Education, 1954.
Yeah.
That was my first year of school.
Was it?
And Chattanooga had a plan where they were hoping they could be less disruptive by just integrating a grade a year. Mm-hmm. By the time I got to 12th grade, they hadn't gotten to my grade yet. So all of my years were in segregated schools. And after that, I went to University of Chattanooga. And I'll tell you what the difference was. The kids at college had read books I hadn't read, but I could read.
Yeah.
So
And that's because you didn't have access to them.
Right. I didn't have access to them. So I realized they got some experience I didn't have, but I got some grounding in segregated schools. So I could just put in some extra time and read the books. Books we were studying in college, they were reading for the second or third time. I was reading for the first time. But I could put in the extra time because I had the grounding in my segregated schools. I can't think of anything that I missed, given the way my life has turned out. I don't think I missed anything except this important thing. I missed the diversity.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. But in terms of getting a good education, I got that. And because I had such a great experience in school, I knew I wanted to be a teacher because you can't always hit the parent jackpot. I hit the parent jackpot too. But school can make up for that, even if you don't hit the parent jackpot. That was my thinking. So if I can be a teacher, even if a kid is missing something, I can help fill the gap. And so that's why I wanted to be a teacher. And I absolutely loved being a teacher. I did. And teaching is really hard work.
Yes.
But I tell some of the teachers that we work with now, they're in a 1-year residency before they actually are teacher of record. And they say, it's hard. And I said, we just watched the Olympics. Don't you think that training was hard?
It's all hard if you do it well.
Yeah, right. Anything you really care about, if it's not hard, you're doing it the wrong way. I said, just think of the hours they put in and the injuries. But to be in the Olympics and to win the gold medal is worth it all. I said, that's the way teaching is. When you see kids that you taught, and sometimes I don't even remember their names, but they say I was their favorite teacher. Yeah. Olympic gold right there. Academy Award right there.
Well, and you, the way you put it of hitting the teacher jackpot and favorite teachers, who were some of the teachers that really influenced you? Did you have, or was it every year you just really recognized what your teachers were doing for you?
Anybody from Chattanooga who's African American will know this name. His name was Mr. Bernard E. Burke, and he was my 8th grade teacher. And he said, you got to love poetry. It'll get you through so many things. And what you want to do is, how teachers make you memorize poems, and like, really, you're going to make us memorize poems. But he said the way you want to memorize it so that you can always have it with you when you need it. And he would just start reciting
Makes sense.
poems. And I did the same thing with my kids. I said, this is why I'm going to ask you to memorize a poem. Memorize any one that you think you'll need. And so I started doing that, and I still do that. And if I recited all the poems, I know the podcast would be over. But, out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. That's from Invictus, William Ernest Henley.
Oh, that's great. And you have access to him at the drop of a hat because you've memorized him.
Right. But he was the one who he inspired that. And I remember telling that story to my 8th graders. And one of them was at UTC and invited me to speak. And when she invited me to speak, in the introduction, she said, when we were in the 8th grade, Ms. Varner told us about her teacher who inspired them to memorize poems that were dear to them, because when they needed those, they could bring them up. You can't carry notes around with you. And that was her introduction. So Mr. Berg, quite a few of them, English teachers, Jessel Bell, again, anybody black in Chattanooga over the age of 50 will know that name as well. Just extraordinary English teacher, and had us reading book after book after book after book. And she made those books come alive. Math was not my strong suit.
Join the club.
Right. I actually learned most of my math by buying books. There's one by Danica McKellar that says how to do math without breaking a fingernail. So that's how I got that. But I tell children, you will love different things about school, but school is a time of exploration, of finding out what you're good at and what you love. And that should inform what career you choose. And so many of them say that is exactly what has happened.
That's got to be rewarding. See, you said something earlier that I want to go back to. Go into a segregated school, you didn't miss out on anything except the diversity.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it also be true for the kids that went to the white schools? They missed out on the diversity too.
Yeah, and I think that's something people still don't get.
Yeah.
Because in our schools, and I love our district, Hamilton County schools. I started in Chattanooga Public Schools, and in 1997 is when the merger happened. So I finished in Hamilton County schools. I think our schools work really hard to get it right. But I think all over the country, this is what we're not getting right. Diversity, you think, okay, we'll get a few Black kids and a few Hispanic kids, and you see the brochure and the same kids are on every page to show, we're about diversity. I think they miss what both white kids and Black kids and kids of all colors get from the diversity. Our country right now is really divisive, and that's a shame because that's not the America I grew up loving. But if we understand, and it's not just diversity of colors, but diversity of thought. I try to go to a conversation like this. There are things I believe. And if I'm in a conversation with you, I want to welcome the testing of what I believe. Because I know that when I leave that conversation, I will be even more affirmed in what I believe, or I will have questions. And that's good to have questions.
That's learning.
It will make me think, right. I remember I grew up Baptist, and at University of Chattanooga, we took Religions of the World. And the teacher was so skillful at teaching religions of the world. And what I came away understanding is, as passionate as I am about Christianity, other people are passionate about their religion. So it's not my thinking, I've got to save them. They don't understand how far they've gone awry. But no, they are as passionate about what they believe. And I want to know more about what they believe and where that passion stems from. And it has never shaken me from my beliefs as a Christian, but it has made me understand there are so many commonalities among the religions and what religion does for us. If somebody says to me, well, what if at the end of time you realize there is no God? And I said, okay, I still led a happy life.
Yeah.
But if there is a God, you're in trouble, buddy.
Yeah. At least I played it right.
Right.
Well, your point is so well taken, because I think people are fearful that if they learn something different than what they've been indoctrinated to, they're going to, I don't know, switch or believe something that they'd never thought. Where it's really just keeping an open mind and understanding that, as you said, they're as passionate about their beliefs as you are in yours. And it's not going to make you change your beliefs, but it's going to maybe help you understand their beliefs a little bit better. Right.
And the goal of education is not to indoctrinate. The goal of education is to make you curious about the world and make you open to always learning something. I tell new teachers that by the time I thought 30 years, I was really good. But I still had a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And you have to always feel as if you have a lot to learn and to be open. I mean, I think that's why I live what I define as a great life, because I know there's still a lot to learn, places to go, people to meet. things to be curious about that are just going to make every day a great day to be alive.
What a great attitude.
Yeah, and so I want students to understand that's what education is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Is to open you up to the world, not to have you, learn some facts, I don't know, that you'll never use. That's not what it's about.
It's almost that some people today don't want to open up the world. They want to lock you into your beliefs and to think that whatever else exists out there isn't right and you shouldn't believe it anyway.
Right. Yeah. We all have to believe the same thing and do the same thing. And I don't think that's true. And going back to the whole idea of diversity, I think diversity of race, of religion, of thought, that's what gets us closer to the kind of world where we don't always have to be at each other.
Yeah.
We don't always have to label each other because of who we are. This doesn't happen as much now, but in old days, it used to happen a lot. Edna, tell me why Black people do this. And I would say, well, since I happen to know every Black person in the world, I can share that with you. It doesn't. Fortunately, I don't get that now, but in my younger days, and I thought they're just trying to understand. They don't mean anything by it, but all Black people are not the same. All white people are not the same.
It's not a monolith.
All Christian, right, and the diversity helps us understand what's different about us and elevate that instead of persecute that.
Yeah. Take me on your education journey. You go to Riverside and you go to University of Chattanooga. You become a teacher.
Interesting.
Yeah. So how did you progress to where you are today?
I actually wanted to go to Howard. At one time, Howard was the only city school for Blacks. Booker T. Washington was the county school for Blacks. So we all knew we were going to Howard. And then Howard was crowded, so they opened Riverside in 1963, and all the Blacks who lived on the east side of town went to Riverside. So now I'm happy. I graduated from Riverside, but I really wanted to go to Howard. And so when I became principal of Howard, I thought I finally got to be a Howard Tiger. The first thing I did was learn the school song. But anyway, I went to Riverside High, and I went to the University of Chattanooga. Now, my family couldn't afford for me to go anywhere else, but that's where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
When I was a kid living on 9th Street, we would ride up the hill to Macaulay Avenue and sit on the wall of the church. That little wall is still there. And my friends and I would say, we're going to that college when we grow up. Well, at the time, it was segregated. But by the time I graduated from Riverside High, it was integrated. So I always wanted to go to the University of Chattanooga. So I went to the University of Chattanooga, worked 40 hours while I
you had a full-time
full
job.
load. Again, I had to pay for college. My parents couldn't because I was the oldest of 8, first gen. So I arranged all of my classes in the morning so that I would be finished by noon. And then I walked down to Market Street and I worked at Moore & King Pharmacy. And I worked at Moore & King Pharmacy from about 1 till 8. And at that time, in Chattanooga, downtown was like a ghost town after 6 o'clock. But we stayed open. We were like a mom and dad operation. You'd call us on the phone. We'd deliver your prescription. So Joe King, who was just the most generous man. I don't know if you ever got to meet him.
No, I didn't.
Joe King, first of all, he made us read books. Well, I was okay because I was in college, but he insisted on that. I was his first Black employee other than cleaning people. And so he told me that. He said, I really needed for you to do well. And fortunately, I did do well. But he would let me do my homework from 6 to 8 because we had very little business. So that did help. So I graduated from UTC. Later, I went back and got a master's in teaching. I only wanted to be a teacher. I never wanted to be an administrator. So I made sure of that by getting a master's in English. And then so happened that a bunch of my friends were getting a master's in leadership, and I just didn't want to be left out of the group.
So you went and got it.
So I already had a master's, so I ended up getting a specialist degree in leadership. Next thing I knew, people were talking to me about being a principal.
So they're pulling you out of the classroom.
Well, and you know what? They made a good case, and it's the case I use now. And they said, you want to make a difference for 25 kids, or you want to make a difference for a whole school?
Yeah.
And I thought, okay. And I used that myself. So I got that specialist degree, and I was going to work on my doctorate. And I wanted to go to a historically Black college. So I started with a group of friends going to Tennessee State University, that's struggling right now.
Yeah.
So we would go every Monday night and take coursework on campus. But then I got transferred. The superintendent asked me to go to Howard High School, and I thought, this is going to take everything I can give. So I dropped out of the doctoral program, worked at Howard for 4 years, and then I retired, and I really didn't need it. Worked out of town for a national literacy initiative for 11 years, and then I came back to work for the Public Education Foundation, and I was coaching principals. And two of the principals said, we're getting our doctorate. Do you want to get one? And I said, okay.
So you went back.
So I went back and got a doctorate from Carson Newman. Mm-hmm. I would have gotten it if TSU had offered something online, but they didn't, because I really did want to get one degree from a historically Black college. So I ended up getting the doctorate from Carson Newman, and it was just for me. My parents always wanted me to do it. I don't get anything from it. I don't get a pay raise. Public Education Foundation, I've already told Dan Challoner, that's my last job. I told everybody else, you've got job security. I don't want your job. I just want to recruit and coach teachers for the rest of my career. So I did get the doctorate, and my parents are up in heaven just kind of dancing around.
Yeah.
And 4 of my siblings have doctorates. So.
Well, and that goes back to your parents' push and
right.
Sitting at that kitchen table. You know, there was another job in your past, and I want to go back to Warren King real quick, but I also want to go back to this other job. When Mr. King said to you, I really need you to do well, did that have any effect on you to hear that? Because that's not something every college kid hears when they go take a job.
No, unless they're lucky enough to get a job with someone who is a mentor, and he was a lifelong mentor. He followed me through school. He would give us books to read, and we'd actually have book studies at work.
What a great thing!
I mean that's unusual.
Yeah. I don't know if you could do that today.
I don't know. You probably couldn't do that today. But he wasn't going to have any trouble out of me anyway because of the way I was raised. But when people say something, you know, I could have taken offense at that. But I did not. I just thought he believed in me. I had another thing happen my first year as a principal where a school board member who I had known in college, she wasn't my teacher, my brother, she came to say, Edna, they're worried. You're not doing well. And I said, what am I not doing well? Because I thought I was. And she just sat down and talked to me. And I thought, I appreciated it so much. Yeah. And when I work with people, I give them hard feedback because I care about them, and people know that about me. I will say it. Mm-hmm. If other people are thinking it and I know they're thinking it and they won't say it, I will say it. But anyway, so she told me this. She said they want to send somebody in to help you and that we want that person to be your co-principal. I said, send somebody to help me, but I don't want to be a co-principal. You give me a little time to correct what you've talked to me about. And if I don't do well, you can send me back to my favorite job, classroom teacher. And I tell people that feedback, direct, hard to hear feedback, I can only summarize its impact on me by saying to you 5 years later, the new superintendent was asking me to be the principal of the toughest high school. And at the time, I was the only female principal, and I was the principal of the toughest high school.
That says a lot.
So I said, that's the power of somebody just telling you. And what you need to read in that, if somebody's willing to give you hard feedback, they think you can rise to it.
Yeah.
And so Joe King, when he said that, first he trusted me with that. You're my first Black, and I need for you to do well. He trusted me and nurtured me, and we were lifelong friends.
Yeah.
In his last years, we went to lunch about once a month, and then he went to Florida.
That's a gift of with.
Yeah, the gift of with. Yeah, that was exactly it, and it was a real gift of with, because I'm not good driving up Signal Mountain, but I made the drive up Signal Mountain sacrifice.
That was your sacrifice
for him. But he believed in me, and over the years, people have believed in me. So many of the opportunities I got when I was in arts and sciences, I'm a teacher, and I was the first teacher who was in Leadership Chattanooga. My principal said, you apply, and we will allow you the time out of school to be in Leadership Chattanooga. And so there I was, the first teacher to be in Leadership Chat, because teachers can't do that. You can't take those days off. He believed in me. He was the one who suggested I apply for a National Endowment for the Humanities summer study. I spent the summer in Stanford University.
Pretty smart.
Because he just suggested that. And so many of the things that have happened to me that have enriched my life. And so now I try to do that.
Yeah.
I try to sponsor other people. A lot of people early on were asking me to be on the board because I knew they needed a Black person on the board. I don't mind being your Black person on the board. Now I don't think that's true. I hope not. No. But what I would do is, for a while I was on a lot of boards.
Yeah.
Still am. But when somebody would ask me to be on the board, I said, you know what? I cannot join another board, but I know someone who would be awesome. And I try to sponsor people in other ways to suggest to them that they go for something the way people came to me and said, Edna, I think you ought to go for this. I think you ought to apply for it. And I'll support you in that. So that's another way of giving service. And it's called sponsorship.
Yeah.
I mean, it has a name, sponsoring other people to do things, because there's so many talented people now that are under the radar.
Well, and if you don't sponsor them, they're not going to get above the radar.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'll say, I'm going to decline, but I know somebody who would be even better. And I served on the board. The first time I did that, I served on the board with someone who was better. And she stayed on long after I left the board. But
that, in my mind, that's a very unselfish and pragmatic approach to, we have problems. We need to solve problems. And it's not just about me. It's here's someone who can help you. Plus, you're giving a leg up, an opportunity to someone who you've noticed, witnessed, worked with, and said, you know what, this person can have a positive impact given the right opportunity.
Right. I've just had so many role models.
Yeah.
I've seen so many people do it for me and do it for other people. It just comes naturally now because so many other people have aspired. Anything that I do, I can draw the line back to someone who inspired me to do that. And I just encourage people to promote others. I encourage principals of schools. You're going to get the credit anyway. You're the principal.
Right.
So how about lavishing that faculty with praise? You didn't do it by yourself, and you know you didn't do it by yourself. So how about elevating them? And a lot of principals have trouble retaining teachers. I didn't have trouble retaining teachers because one of my principals would call me in and he would say, I've got a tough decision to make. And it's going to be my decision to make, but I need to hear from people. Mm-hmm. and I tell principals that's the way you need to treat your faculty. You got to let them know that we're not going to vote. We're not going to vote. But I cannot make a tough decision without hearing from you and having you inform it. So, if I do something like that, people go, oh, Edna, you're so awesome and wise. No, I learned that from somebody.
And that's another great point. It's not like you just came up with all this. It's, in my mind, in talking to you, it goes back to the way your parents raised you.
Right,
that was the beginning of that base. But then the other people who interacted in your life and gave you those opportunities there is what you just talked about, identifying folks, sponsoring them, giving them an opportunity. Is that unique to Chattanooga, or do you see that in other places?
Well, except for that 11 years when I worked for a national literacy initiative and I was all over, Chattanooga was my place. I have learned that in Chattanooga, and that's one of the reasons when I was offered that job after I retired from the district, I said, first of all, I'm never moving from Chattanooga. I love Chattanooga. I love that it's a small town with big town opportunities. Yeah, it's both. And I heard a visitor once say that. It's got big city opportunities, but it also feels like a small town. I love that. So I have to say that growing up in Chattanooga, I learned a lot of that from here. And I tell people, especially these new teachers who are thinking of moving here, I said, this is a town where you walk down a street and your mayor calls you by your first name. And you can call him by his first name except when he's presenting. Or the same thing about the superintendent of schools. I can call him by his first name, but I would always refer to him as Dr. Robertson if we were in a formal meeting. It's like a family town. And since I grew up in a family, I understand the power of family. So I think a lot of what I learned here. But that 11 years away from here, I think what it prepared me for two things. I spent 7 years at a high-performing magnet, and all of my other years were in high-poverty schools. So I spent that 11 years traveling all across the United States, and that initiative had a partnership with the UK. So we worked with schools that had high poverty, but their kids were scoring as well as affluent kids. That 7 years I was at Arts and Sciences, I always say I finally got to see what the other kids were getting, not the kids in poor schools. And so that made me determined to bring some of that back to poor schools. And I tell some of our teacher recruits, they have a commitment to teach in high need schools. And then after that 4-year commitment, they can teach anywhere. And I said, we'd love to show you other schools, not so that you can defect and go to them, but you can see what other kids are getting in more affluent schools, and you can bring that back. And that's what I loved about the two faculties I worked with. I was principal of Chattanooga Middle, and I was principal of Howard High School. And first thing we do, we send the kids to other schools, come back and tell us what you see there that you want here, and let us work on that. It's not about escaping, because you leave poor kids behind who deserve a great education. I have forgotten what your original question was, but what I learned, I think most of what I learned growing up in Chattanooga, and it has been great growing up in Chattanooga. I learned some things from other places, but Chattanooga is home. It's like family.
Right.
You learn a lot from others, but family is different.
It's kind of an extension of your 7 siblings.
Right, right, yeah.
Well, and you and I have known each other a few years now, and you are very Chattanooga. You're if there's something positive happening in town, you're generally either behind it or on the board. Yeah, of it.
I hope so.
At least that's my experience,
or donating to it.
Or donating to it. And I want to ask you a couple more questions before we got to wrap this up. One is, you are the incoming president of Chattanooga Rotary.
I am.
Think back to high school in Chattanooga Rotary and what that meant, because Chattanooga Rotary's been around since the 20s. And
Well,
they didn't even have female members up until.
right. And this is a bit of trivia. I'm the first African American woman. And Pete Cooper told me that. I had served on the Community Foundation board, and Pete Cooper was already a mentor. And he took me to lunch one day and he said, "How would you like to be in Chattanooga Rotary?" And the only thing I knew about Chattanooga Rotary was old white men meeting.
Still a lot of us there.
It's a lot more diverse now. But I said, "Pete, why would I even be in Rotary?" And I said, "And why would they approve me?" And he said, "You're already approved, because that's how membership works. Before you go ask somebody and then they go through it and don't get approved." He said, "All you have to do is agree to do it." And at that time, I was principal of Howard High School, so I could make it work because I was downtown. So I said, "But I still don't understand why." He said, "Go home and Google Rotary." And most of the work that Rotary was doing worldwide and locally was for people who looked just like me. Mm-hmm. And I thought, yes, yeah. I want to be a part of this. And when I did my member speech, I said, "I can't believe that people of prestige and importance like all of you would invite to membership a girl from 9th Street." And that's what I was. And so when Rowena Belcher was going to be board chair of Chat State following me, and she said, "I really need to meet with you." And I said, "Well, Rowena, my schedule won't work right now." She said, "It's really important." I said, "Rowena, you've been board chair before. What do you need to talk to me about?" And she said, "Just please meet with me." So I met her at the coffee shop. I walk in. There's John Germ, Virginia and Sharber, Elaine, Tom White. I think he had a family emergency, but he was supposed to be there. And I said, "What is this?" And they said, "We want you to be the president of Rotary." And I said, "Me?"
That's great.
I can't believe it. It is such an incredible honor. I'm living my ancestors' wildest dreams. I would never have thought it. But it is such an honor, so I've just been working really hard to be worthy.
You're absolutely worthy. And you know, it wasn't that long ago. Yeah, that it wouldn't have been.
Right. That's why I tell people I'm glad I grew up to experience the end of segregation in Chattanooga, because sometimes it's surreal. I will be sitting in a place and I'll remember that there was a time I could not be here.
Yeah, that's got to be surreal. That's got to just kind of.
Yeah, I cannot believe I'm here, and to be Rotary president, I just want to make sure. Mr. King's, I want to make sure that I do a good job.
Well, I have no doubt you'll do a good job, and I'm really glad you're here. Before I get to my last question, I do want to remind our listeners who makes all this possible, and that's the Tennessee Valley Authority. I thank them for sponsoring my morning cup. Follow TVA on social media to learn more about its multifaceted mission of service, and visit TVA.com/do-good-here to explore exciting TVA career opportunities. My last question for you, it's my standard last question. What would you tell that 25-year-old Edna Varner is important for a happy life?
To follow your heart, take risks, be open to opportunity, and you have to be in the place that can make opportunity happen. I tell folks now, you'll see me showing up because if I'm at home, I miss opportunities. So I would just say, keep preparing, be open to opportunity, go for it, even if you don't think you're ready for it. Pete Cooper told me that when I was being considered for board chair. I said, "I've never been a board chair before." He said, "Everybody who's a board chair at one time had never been a board chair before."
Sounds like Pete.
Yeah. And now I've been board chair of about 10 nonprofits in Chattanooga. But just be open to it and just know whatever it is, if any human can do it, if you work hard enough, you can do it too, and you can do it well.
I like what you said, be there. Yeah,
you got to be there.
Because so many people get hesitant, afraid, I just won't go.
Oh, no.
And if you don't go, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Opportunity will find you if you're there and you're open. You don't always have to recognize it, but it helps.
And you don't even have to be vying for it.
Right, exactly.
You just a simple conversation with someone
could trigger a thought.
Absolutely. And I enjoy that. Like I said, growing up in a large family, I love being around people.
Yeah.
And so, if I look at my calendar and there's a free spot and then I look and something's going on, I'm going to be there.
Yeah. Well, to me, that kind of wraps back full circle in the power, the gift of with.
Yeah.
You're there and you're with someone.
It is.
And I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for taking time to come talk.
Well, thank you for making this easy. I thought, oh no, what will I say? Thank you. I appreciate this so much. Thank you.
I do too. It's good to see you. Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.